St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jane Puszkar.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to St. Charles Patriot Radio on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. Today, we're going to interview Kurt Bahr, who is a current winner of the primary for Director of Elections. Congratulations, Kurt. We're really glad that you agreed to come and talk with us. Kurt is a veteran, both from the military, Air Force. Thank you for your service. And also a veteran of the House of Representatives of Missouri. That deserves even more respect. Kurt was elected in 2018 to the Director of Elections position, and in 2028,
county clerks and election authorities.
So you'll have to explain all that
Absolutely.
and what it means to us here in a minute. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in history and political science, as they say, and a master's in public policy, which sounds like, the precursor to action is always study. So it sounds like you did your
I have read John Locke, The Federalists, and a bunch of other writers. Yeah.
Good for you. Thanks for agreeing to come and talk with us, Kurt.
Absolutely.
Well, Kurt, thanks. This is kind of the first time I've seen you since the elections. I just want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
I think you ran a very well campaign, a clean campaign. And the whole time that we were doing this, there was the statistics were coming out. And that's kind of what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. I made some predictions early on about the turnout of the populace of St. Charles County. And I think I did pretty good calling it right on. I know there were some people were expecting lower numbers, but I thought we had pretty good. I think you ended up with 41%.
So it was 36% for St. Charles County.
Okay.
Might have been 31 statewide total. Some counties had higher, some counties had lower. But yeah, I thought we were going to be a little closer to 40, just because in 2018, when right to work was on the ballot, we were at 39%. And so I thought Amendment 4 and 5 would drive that same level of engagement. So I was off by a little bit, but yeah, 36% put St. Charles County at the higher end of the state, as we typically are. Our voters do tend to show up to vote.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about St. Charles County. And, I had a bill that went through the House, and actually Adam Schnelting had a bill, and then it came through the House, and we got it through the House last year to change voter dates into the November elections from the April elections for school boards only.
Yes.
And my total drive for that was to try to get more voter turnout. I believe in April we have a very low turnout.
We average 10, 12% in April. Yeah.
I just don't think we should be electing people for school boards and manipulating tax policy by 12% of the registered voters.
Well, it's the majority of those who participate.
There you go.
Kurt, I have a question. Was that a record? 36% for during your tenure, or for all of?
During my tenure, yes. So the year before I became director, in 2018, the right to work issue, we had a 39% turnout.
39.
So that was a historic high watermark. But other than that one anomaly, this 36% is sadly a high number for especially this odd year. So this is the weird year where the top of the ticket is the auditor. And there's no state senator or no U.S. senator, no other big ticket race. So 12 years ago, the November turnout was only 40% for the November election. Now, obviously, with Amendment 3 on the ballot, we're going to see, at least double that, maybe even 70%. We're looking at more like, we'll be prepared for a presidential level turnout just because of the Amendment 3, not because of the top of the ticket.
Well, statistically speaking, though, you're driving out more people than ever, even though it's not a percentage increase, because our county has grown since 2018 or 2012, 2018. We've had a lot of people
we have
move in.
300,000 registered voters. St. Charles County is the second largest jurisdiction, after St. Louis County, as far as just sheer number of voters. And so, yeah, when we're looking at percentages, even comparing the 2018 number to the 2026 number, we added 20,000 voters in that time frame. And so, we had more votes overall in 2026. It's just that percentage is just a little bit lower than it was.
Wow. I'm listening to the numbers. That's one of the reasons I love St. Charles County. So we have a populace of just over 400,000?
I think it's like 415, 420 as far as the total number of
roughly,
people, and then about 300,000 of registered voters.
Roughly 75% of registered voters. That's a great number. Of course, we'd like to see 100%, but you've got, kids and things.
Well, if you take out anybody under 18 who can't legally vote, then we're closer to 90% voter registration.
Yeah. I mean, that is absolutely great. And I attribute that to St. Charles, to the communities that we have, but people like yourself, I know that you guys are always pushing to increase our voter turnout, to increase our voter registration, and I just think your office does a great job with that.
Thank you.
You know, Kurt, during the election, there was a lot of contention, and not just your race, but I think a lot of the other races as well. And the nice thing is the election's now over. Congratulations on your victory. But I would have a question for you. Is there anything that you think we should be doing to bring the party and everybody back together? Well, that's not funny, but.
So I recall in 2010, when I first ran for the House, it was at that time also a somewhat competitive primary time. There was a lot of Republicans running against each other for a number of things. And we had a Republican picnic right after the primary election. And the thing I talked about was, hey, it doesn't matter whose camp you were for August. We're all Republicans and we need to band together to work together so that we have victory in November. So this is nothing that's new. But what is new is the camps, right? Because there's certain people who, were running this time who didn't win. And the question is, will they be team players to encourage their supporters? Hey, even though, I lost, we lost, we should still support the Republican. Or will there be some sour grapes and they'll say, well, we're going to support the other party or we're just not going to show up to vote. So those are the questions. But really that's on, for the most part, the candidates who lost to step up and be team players, more so than for the candidates who won. Now, we should always be gracious winners and, not rub anybody's nose. Hey, I won, you lost. Haha. That's tacky. We don't want to do that. We want to encourage everybody to say, hey, win or lose, we all want, a good St. Charles County. We want good elections. We want good public policy. We want good public servants at all levels of government.
We're here talking with Kurt Bahr, the current winner of the primary for the St. Charles County Director of Elections. And so Kurt, I have another question for you. Do you know what the ratio is between the amount of the ballots that were pulled for either Democrat, Republican, or nonpartisan? Let me just start off with the nonpartisan because those people got to vote for two things, the amendments, and that was about it.
Well, so it was the 4 ballot measures.
Four ballot
1, 2, 4,
measures.
5. Okay. And then Winsfield School District had another ballot measure. So people who lived in Winsfield School District had a 5th. So that was it. So a nonpartisan ballot is an issues only ballot.
Oh, okay.
In 2024, 1.6% of the voters who asked for a ballot asked for a nonpartisan ballot. For 2026, it was over 9% of the voters who asked for a ballot asked for that nonpartisan ballot, which is like a 723% increase in number of voters. And this wasn't just St. Charles County where we saw this massive increase. There was counties across the state that were rushing to print extra nonpartisan ballots and get those to the polling places. Unfortunately, Jackson County got in the news for not being fast enough at printing their ballots. St. Charles County, we had enough in stock at the election authority office that we didn't have to print. We just had to, deliver some ballots at a couple of polling places. Judges said, hey, our stock is getting low. And so we were able to issue those out. So we never had an issue in St. Charles County with, lack of ballots because, we bought enough. But this was a situation that caught all of the election authorities across the state because it's an anomaly in trend where, a lot of people who came out to vote for the ballot measures, they wanted to vote only on the ballot measures and they didn't want to vote a party ballot. Now, some of that could be voters are confused. They think, well, if I ask for a Republican ballot or Democrat ballot, I'm going to be registered to that party. And that's not how it works in Missouri. We're an open primary state. You can ask for any party ballot. And the reality is only 2% of voters in St. Charles County are registered to any party. 2%.
2. And
of that 2%, about 55 or 60% 35% are Republican, 30% are Democratic, and then another roughly 30% I have intentionally identified as unaffiliated. So most people don't affiliate at all. And those who do, almost a third of them are choosing to affiliate as unaffiliated.
I didn't even know that you could declare one or the other.
So that changed in 2022 when the photo ID law was passed and a number of other things. That was one of the little elements in there. There was at the time a state rep who wants closed primaries. And so this was his first step to try to get us towards closed primary by making it optional to register by party, which I think is kind of funny when people are saying, well, you can't, if you're not Republican, you can't pull a Republican ballot. Most people aren't Republicans because they're not registered as Republicans.
Right.
Most people aren't Democrats because they're not registered as Democrats. It's not a thing that is an honest argument.
So this is an interesting discussion because I found this out when we were running for Central Committee. There was a number of us. You're running for your own Central Committee as a Republican, and I think
it was almost half of the Republicans in the Republican Central Committee were not registered as Republicans.
Yeah. So let that ring a bell for a minute. I just think it's because people don't understand the process or know the process. And it's not that they don't want to. I just think education is the key here.
And so part of that is most people, when they register or update their voter registration, they're doing it at the DMV. The DMV does not ask that question, which party do you want to be registered to? So the number one way people register, that question is not being asked. So if somebody goes online to the SOS website to update their registration, then they can update that. But it's always an optional thing.
That's good to know. The Secretary of State website you can go to register.
And then the old school paper forms, you can do it that way too.
Yeah, we have a really good Secretary of State, and he does a really good job of keeping his website up to date. I have recommended before, especially with the initiative petition process, to go out there and read. I was having a discussion with somebody this weekend that's in the House of Representatives on the Republican side, and they didn't even understand the initiative petition process. They were voting against it and talking against it because they thought we were taking away the rights for people to, and didn't even understand that there was a process for people to still create an initiative petition process for the revised statute side. And I said, it's things like that end us in the hole we were in.
And that's a discussion we need to have, because I've heard this said that people that are running against, something can put out any information that they want. There's no accountability as to whether it's truth or not, which I think is what you're referring to when you just spoke about that.
But, and whether or not there's truth to it or whether or not there's intent or malice behind it, but ignorance is not a justification to go out and lead people down the wrong path either.
Exactly.
And, I think we've tried many a times here in other places. I had town halls and things where I really tried to explain this process because people just don't understand the intricacies of the way things are.
Right. So like the election authority to help with this lack of knowledge, we did a voter guide for all the candidates, allowed all the candidates to answer basically two questions. Who are you? Why are you running? And then put that out on the website, very neutral for all parties. And then, we'll do it again for the November election, either reissue those responses or give somebody a chance to respond if they hadn't. And then we also link to the Secretary of State's website, because for the ballot measures, you can, read the full language of how either the statute or constitution will be changed. You can also read what's called the fair ballot language. And that's, the idea of saying, okay, if passed, this is the change. If not passed, this is the effect, the change or lack thereof. And so we try to get all that information on our website for voters to be able to go to so they can know they're getting, trusted information about elections, as well as be able to find where their polling place is, see their sample ballot and all those other elements so that they can be informed voters.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, you had an affair called Sundays on Sunday. I just want to say I thought that was a brilliant idea. Where did you talk to some of your colleagues on how to do that, or did that just come from you?
Talking to election authorities from other jurisdictions, they've done either open houses or other types of events. And so it was kind of a conversation with staff and with some other people about, hey, these people do this, these people do this. And we kind of start talking about how can we, bring people together to allow voters to meet with the candidates and also see the process in the election authority, how their ballots are counted, how we have all the transparency of the pre-auditing, the post-auditing, the hand count audit, all that stuff, and make people aware of all that. And so we stole some ideas and we kind of organically modified it to fit our needs. And we got a lot of positive feedback on that. Not sure if we're going to do it again for November, but we are thinking about doing it again for April, for our municipal elections.
All right. So we are here with our current director of elections, Kurt Bahr, and he just won the primary race for to move forward with another 4 years. So Kurt, when we get back, we're going to go on break here, but when we come back, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the statistical numbers. You put something out on the internet the other day, and I was looking at it. It was like, wow, there's a lot of really good information there. Maybe we can get into that and unpack some of that and see, just kind of see what direction St. Charles County is heading, and then after that, we're going to have a surprise for our third segment. We're going to bring in your wife, Jen Bahr, who's on the St. Charles County Central Committee and on the P&Z for St. Charles County, the government of St. Charles County. So with that, we'll be back in a few.
St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jen Puszkar.
Thanks for tuning back in to News Talk STL for St. Charles Patriot Radio. We have with us today, of course, my lovely host, Jen Puszkar.
Thank you.
And we have a special guest today, Mr. Kurt Bahr. He is our current Director of Elections. Will there be a Democrat who will run against you?
I have a libertarian opponent for the general election.
He ran against my predecessor 3 times.
Yes.
And he's actually a really nice guy. But so there will be a runoff in November.
There is a general election in November.
There will be a general election. So, well, welcome back and thank you very much. And again, I think I said it before, but congratulations. It was a good campaign your team ran.
Thank you.
So, Jen, did you have anything else?
Yeah, I do. I have a question. We spoke earlier in the last segment about trying to bring everybody back together. Mm-hmm. So I know that you have the interest, and I'm hoping that a lot of other people do too. There's been a move forward to have a rally sometime in October, which I'm really excited and hope that you would be able to attend. This came about through the hard work of Bobby No and Steve Ellman and also Adam Schnelting, noticing that there's a gap that has happened since the election occurred, or before the election is when it actually started. But yeah, so I'm hoping. What are your thoughts on having a rally or anything like that?
Like, I am all about political engagement and
you as director of elections?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's my job to make sure that the voters have as easy as access to the ballot, and as clear of a process for them to register, correctly and legally so that everybody can engage in the process. Because the more people who participate in our representative republic, then the more that they are bought into the process and the more that the system as a whole has confidence and legitimacy. And I am all for us as a party, us as a county, joining together and saying, hey, we can agree to disagree on certain issues, but we are going to support overall the people who won, the policies that are being made. And if we don't like that, then we will reasonably and respectfully, agree to disagree, at the appropriate time, at the appropriate level. But for right now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that, St. Charles County voters get to the polls, whether they do it during the 2 weeks of no excuse in-person absentee voting, or they do it on election day. We want to make sure that they have that opportunity because we want a strong showing, from St. Charles County voters about these statewide issues.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about possibilities that you as Director of Elections holds, taking the vision of the county forward. Do you feel that the staff at the office is right-sized? Are there any other changes that you think that you'd like to institute to make it even better? So
elections are feast and famine. In the odd years when we aren't doing multiple elections, it feels like the work is a little bit slow. But that's when we'll work on, updating our processes, doing continuing education, training. There's a lot of things that we can do to stay effective and get ready for elections. But on election day, for November, I will have 800 election workers just issuing out ballots at the polling places. I will have another 800 election workers on election day.
I had no idea.
And then I will have another 30 or 40 temps during the either the 2 to 6 weeks of absentee voting for the people coming to not only my office, but our 2 satellite locations to be able to vote during that time frame, as well as the, 12 warehouse temps, plus the additional workforce. So, I will on election day, there'll be over or about 1,000 people working on elections. My staff is 14, right? So I have 14 full-time people, and on election day, we will be managing 1,000.
Okay, let me change my question. Are you going to be adding people?
So, no, what we did add after the November of 24 election, we did add a new position, and I staffed that to help me manage the satellite location because we went from St. Charles County underutilizing the early voting time frame to heavily utilizing it, and people going, well, why aren't we St. Louis County? They have all these locations. Well, St. Louis County has a much, much larger labor force for their board of elections. And so I told the counties, like, hey, one of the problems that we had at that time was I didn't have somebody who could manage the temps offsite. And that was a struggle that we had. So we created that position. We filled that position, and the guy that I have there, he's great. He's doing wonders there. And that has helped tremendously to manage those satellite locations. And so we have that. It's one of those things where in some ways, if I could have a magic wand, I might actually have fewer full-time staff who are paid better and had like a higher supervisory level, where then they were managing temps to do the bulk of the work, because, as the elections get closer, the work just increases. It's just volume. The more voters coming in, the more phone calls we get. It's just everything scales, and we do what we can to scale up to that. But we had a really good, smooth November or August primary, and we're planning for another, well-run November election, even though we're going to see twice the turnout that we saw in August.
Wow. So who's the numbers guy in your office? Is it you or is it somebody else?
Well, it depends on the numbers. I like the big numbers, the high level numbers. But then I have my deputy, Mark Parkinson. He is definitely my audit guy. And so he makes sure that all the small numbers are matching up. The daily totals are matching up. So during the election, during those 2 weeks, I was doing that little bar chart showing, here's the number of voters, all these polling places. That was something that Mark did. And I put it out there on Facebook so there's a lot of people to kind of see it. Yeah. But the reason we created it was for auditing purposes, because we're tracking the number of ballots that we're issuing out every single day, and we're tracking the number of ballots that we're counting every single day. And that has to always be correct. And so that was actually just a internal, audit chart is what we use it for. Right. And I just started to, make it public just to show, hey guys, look, here's the numbers.
I got a lot of feedback on that. People are really interested in the numbers. The more we post, the more we do, I think it will help, our voters understand, what's going on behind the scenes. Cause I know, and I've talked to people and think, well, they just show up and they collect all these ballots and throw them in a pile. And so I was I did supervisory for you. For maybe a year or two before I really got too busy, but there's a lot involved. I mean, there's a lot of security. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of counting. There's a lot of justifying. Everything that's done has a number attached to it. Yeah. And I just don't think that the population in in the state actually really appreciates the numbers. I mean, the amount of numbers you have to deal with are just staggering.
Right. So we did our hand count audit on Friday. We only had 4 members of the public who came to watch that process. But we had bipartisan teams, doing a spot audit of the ballots. And then, once again, we showed that the hand count audit, confirmed that the election night results from our election tabulators at the precinct level reported the correct numbers.
Sure.
And then we even, went so far as to count that time and say, okay, based on this hand count audit, how much time we spent just doing a single issue per precinct. We averaged 9 ballots per minute, to do that. So if you want to say that for a November election, you generally have 20 to 30 issues. So, and do the math of what hand counting really takes time wise. I think that the voters made a good decision keeping me in office, doing elections.
Yeah. We've talked often and I appreciate you've always opened up your office to me for anything as a state representative. If I come in and have a question, you'll bring me in, show me the exact process, show me how you do it. And I think you would probably be that way with most people.
Oh, absolutely. We have nothing to hide. We want people to trust the system, but it's trust but verify, right? That's the whole, elections is all about bipartisan. We have Republicans, Democrats always because, we want to have that check and balance. And we have a process where, yes, I have a full-time staff and we, obviously have the institutional knowledge and the better knowledge of statute, but we bring our judges in for training every single election so that they are aware of the process, the law, and any types of changes. And, whether it's the logic and accuracy test beforehand, that's known as the public count, or we do the verification board, which will be done on Friday this week, or the hand count audit, which is also open to the public. All these things are open, and as well as the voter rolls. Anybody can just ask for the list of voters in St. Charles County, and we give that away free. We don't charge for that because it's just an open record.
Mm-hmm.
We're here talking with Kurt Bahr, the current director of elections. Kurt, I'm going to go back to something you said earlier about 4 people showing up for this audit. Tell me your thoughts as to whether or not you think that that's just lack of interest, or maybe people didn't know. I know myself, and I'm not blaming you. Myself, I didn't know about it until the day after. It's usually the way I
listen to the ads on your radio station.
That's the way
I advertise that on the station.
Busted. Yeah. I listen to the radio. I don't listen to all the ads. But
so we did radio PSAs for leading up to this election, and one of the things that we did the PSA on was the hand count audit.
Really?
Leading up to the election, yes.
Okay, so it's like stupid people didn't know, like myself. Okay.
The process is the process, but one thing I have learned, is that, as Rich had talked about with that rep being ignorant about the IP process, most of us don't know the intricacies of what the law requires and allows. And I have been learning and working on, communicating with voters more proactively, explaining this, because it's not just enough to say, hey, we're transparent because you can come and ask. We want to be transparent where we're now like broadcasting this information. That's the reason for that Sundays on Sunday town hall, where, half of it was, to meet the candidates. The other half was to see the election authorities, see the process of how we deal with the ballots by mail and program and secure the voting machines and all of that.
I also thought a nice touch was the adoptable pets. You had a couple dogs there. I thought that was it's like covering up.
And so that was just that was cool. A conversation that we were having internally within the county of, hey, I was, the Pet Adoption was talking about how they had a lot of dogs at the time who needed to be adopted. And I was talking about doing this event. And then we're like, well, why don't you bring your dogs over and, I'll have people here and then you can show off the dogs and I'll advertise that there are going to be some puppies here. And so that was kind of a cute little thing. And it's also like, because we did it on a Sunday, we were like, oh, we'll call it Sundays on Sunday. So we had the ice cream and the ice cream was very good. We hired a local ice cream manufacturer from O'Fallon who has like a boutique ice cream place. And so he provided the ice cream. But it was a lot of fun.
Okay. So what's in store moving forward now that we're over this hump? Right. Of course, we're going to get over the November hump, but I mean, what's in store with your office for future improvements? Of course, I'm sure you're going to continue to educate the populace by putting out as much as you can. But
so one of the things that we are trying not to do for November is do much change. So we don't want to change too many of the polling places. There's one polling location O'Fallon I might want to move just because we got some bad reviews from voters about that one location. And then we'll move back. There's one polling place in Lake St. Louis that we had to temporarily move. So we'll move back to that one. But aside from that, like polling places, we want to keep consistent so that voters know where they can go, because they don't like showing up one place and be told they're in the wrong spot. We will of course do the sample ballot again, that it'll be smaller because it'll just be one ballot instead of having 4 different ballots to choose from. So hopefully we can get the font slightly bigger. But on that, we're also working on, updating the information about the no excuse in-person voting. So one of the changes we'll do there is we were open until 7 p.m. on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we're going to extend that for the Wednesdays as well. So we'll have 6 days of extended hours until 7 o'clock, because that was definitely a very popular thing. We've got a lot of people coming in after work, coming in, to vote. And, like I said, we want St. Charles County voters to show up to vote. Yeah. And if work is what's keeping them from voting, then we want to minimize that obstacle. So we're going to be open, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday for both of those 2 weeks of no excuse, till 7 o'clock at the election authority office. And then we'll work on, areas where we learned about confusion from voters. We're just trying to find ways to educate the public about that so that, that there's at least the answer on the website so they can go and see it. And then we'll continue to do more radio PSAs to hopefully next time you'll hear about them. And maybe we need to advertise a little bit more here.
I'm never going to live that down.
And then, educate the public that way. But yeah, we've tried multiple things. Oh, the other thing that we're working on doing is some sort of like YouTube live type of Q&A process. So I was talking to communications yesterday about doing something like that. And so we're thinking about doing something probably in October before the election of, just allowing voters to do like type in some questions and give responses. And, we're just, like I said, we're trying to be as transparent as possible, not just by saying, yes, you can come and ask, but we're trying to get that information to voters every which way we can.
Sure.
We'll be back in a minute, but I just want to remind everybody, if you want to have hassle-free listening to St. Charles Patriot Radio, download that app. It's in the App Store. It's free. St. Charles Patriot Radio. So we'll be right back.
St. Charles Patriot Radio with Missouri State Representative Richard West and former Francis Howell School Board member Jen Puszkar.
And bam, just like that, we're back. St. Charles Patriot Radio. Thanks for hanging with us. We're going to do a segment with both Kurt and Jen Bahr. Jen, I know, is on the Central Committee for St. Charles GOP, Cattleville Township. And I know, Jen, that you are also involved with a couple other positions. Could you tell us what those are?
Oh, sure. I am currently one of the state party members for St. Charles County, and I'm also on the St. Charles County Planning and Zoning Commission.
So let me see. We got Kurt. And we got you. We don't need anybody else in politics because we got these two. I mean, I would like to know, did he get you interested or did you get him interested?
Well, when we actually met in college and we were both on the debate team. So we've both been interested in politics for a long time.
Study's always the precursor.
She was better than me.
That's why you became the state rep, right?
You're a smart man to say that on the radio. You very much are.
So look, I think this is a great time for all of us to get together here. St. Charles County is a great place, to live, a great place to raise a family. We have a lot of safe areas in St. Charles County. We have a lot of really good things going for us.
Yes, we do.
We also have
Good
a lot of contention between our Republican Party. I mean, it's known all across the state. It's known at the state capitol. Seems like we're always fighting ourselves, but you know what? When it's time to get it done, we all come together and we work together to get it done. So, this last primary election, I hate primaries. I've seen where some really good friends pit themselves against each other for a position that, yes, it's a position of esteem where, you might be a state office or even a county office, but at what cost do you drag your friend or your somebody you really would have cared about in the future or in the past? At what cost do you drag that through the mud to, just disintegrate everything? And now we're here on this side of it, and we have to figure out how we're going to repair those relationships again so that we can get back to work and do some good for the people.
Richard, you and I agree on almost everything. But what I was going to say, I like primaries because I think after a primary, the person that wins, it gives you an opportunity to get to know everybody at the same time. And then afterwards, it also gives you a little bit more time to come together for the general election.
Guys, you want to? I'll keep going. What I don't like about primaries is you know your opponents so well that you know where to push the buttons and whether it may be true or not. And that's the part that I have a problem with primaries. If you and I are running for the same position and I think I'm better than you because I have a better plan, I'm all for that.
Right. We need to have Jen tell us a little bit about what she would change being on the committee and all your other positions. Is there anything you would change about St. Charles County or things that you want to see done better in St. Charles County? What's your vision?
Well, I just want to say this was a little bit of a surprise for me. I just came to watch Kurt on the radio and then they pulled me in here. So
it's a conspiracy.
Well, I mean, I really enjoy serving on the Central Committee. And I think for that position, one of the things that I'd really like to see change is I'd like to see the Central Committee itself get more involved. So one of the things that I've done, and Richard knows this, is in several elections, I've actually coordinated with all the different state reps, state senators, sometimes judges, different candidates, and I've had them bring all of their signs to my house. And I've bundled those signs together and split up the different locations, the different precincts, and polling locations so that only one person had to go and take all of those signs to one polling location, as opposed to every single candidate having to drive to each of the 104 polling locations.
Yeah. So, Kurt, how many polling places do we have in St. Charles County?
So we have 115 precincts, 104 polling locations. Okay. If you notice though, it'll say 117 on the report. That's because absentee is counted as a polling place, and my office is called the central polling place for election day. So when you look at the results, it says 117 precincts, but there's 104 locations voters will go on election day to vote.
So the reason I asked that question is, Jen, you brought up a great thing was, we all have our little areas that we represent, and if you disseminate out everybody's, packets, or they're like what you did. I mean, I came to your house and I picked up for 5 different polling locations. I picked up, probably about 15, 20 signs.
And I just want to say I appreciate that, because you didn't even have signs for yourself that you were putting out, but you did that as a sacrifice and as a cooperative.
Well, it's part of the
player.
game. It's part of what we should be doing
right.
as Republicans, and as good stewards for the people is doing things like that. And I think that's a great example on how St. Charles County should come together. I think it is 2 years ago, we were having problems finding state offices, people to run for those offices for state office. And I think it's incumbent upon the Central Committee to be out there beating the bush. They should be, your township is almost about as local as you can get, right? You should be out there in your township trying to find people that want to run for these offices and vetting them. And I don't mean vetting them by giving them a list, but, find out who they are. Are they good people? What is their true spirit of politics? And, would they be a good fit? And then, we should bring those to the Central Committee, and we should talk about them, meet them, and bring them in, and which is we kind of do, but I don't think we do enough of it. If you have a state office that is going unanswered in a mostly Republican county, then we're not doing our job, and I think we could do a better job of that.
We're here talking with Kurt Bahr, the current Director of Elections, and Jen Bahr, who's the St. Charles County Central Committee, Cottleville Township representative. How about that? I got it all out. But you hit on something earlier, Jen, about getting people involved. And I couldn't agree more, because I know as these primaries and these elections started rolling, if you went to a fundraiser or any get together, you just saw the same people. You didn't see new faces. Rarely did you see new faces. And if you did, they looked kind of lost, like we have this own little private club and you're just trying to join. So yes, I commend. How would you do that? How would you get more people involved in the Central Committee, or get the Central Committee more involved in other issues?
Well, Richard mentioned having particular positions go unfilled. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we do, in fact, have 2 unfilled positions on the Central Committee. I believe it's the Spencer Creek Township and the Harvester Township. Harvester, I believe, is the committee woman, and Spencer Creek, I believe, is the committee man, if I'm remembering correctly. But
I think you're correct.
Yeah. So if anybody is interested in joining the Central Committee, please, go to our website.
And if you live in Spencer Creek.
Yes, you have to live in those areas. Yeah. And you're going to have to look on the St. Charles County GIS map, and you can, in fact, look up the political townships and see where those boundaries are and see if you live within those boundaries, or you can contact anybody on the committee, and we should be hopefully able to help. If you contact me, I know I will be able to help. I can't guarantee everybody else knows how to do that. So.
Right.
Quick email.
Yes. So my email is Jen Bahr. That's JenBahr, St. Charles GOP @gmail.com.
Okay, great.
So, well, let's just go here. So since I'm on the Central Committee as well, we had a really nice picnic not too long ago, and we have events where we're down at the Festival of Little Hills, I think. Anyway,
Oktoberfest.
Yeah, Oktoberfest, I think it is. So we try to get out there and talk to the people and, present who we are. And of course, we're always looking for people to come in and be a member if that's the thing. But we meet every 3rd Thursday currently over at what golf course?
Old Hickory.
Old Hickory Golf Club, yeah. And we just had our elections for that. We have 2 openings, but we're going to be replacing some people, so that'll be moving forward. But I think it goes much farther than that. I think it goes outside of just our Central Committee. Jen, you're on our planning and zoning for St. Charles County. That's a hot topic right now.
It is.
I mean, my gosh, if you've ever attended one of those and they have it down at the arena, oh my gosh, it's an all-nighter. Yep. And a lot of people have a lot of opinions, and it's good to have those opinions. But the problem I find with government in general is people always want to get involved when they're in the last step, right before they're ready to drop the hammer or whatever it is. Nobody pays attention to, and Jane, you'll appreciate this because you were on the school board. Nobody pays attention to the 6 months you worked on a project to get that project to the end, and nobody's made any comments. Nobody's said anything. And all of a sudden you're ready to initiate or begin this project, and all of a sudden everybody comes out of the woodwork. We need people to get involved at the very beginning, pay attention to what's going on all the way across the board.
My hat always goes off to people that run for school board and committee person and state person. All of those are volunteer positions. And good for you that you do this all without taking a salary, plus putting up with all of the things that happen that people say the defamation. I went through this. I'm not saying you did. Defamation, slander, libel, all that good stuff, all for the good of no paycheck. No.
Well, I've always looked at government. You guys speak up too. You guys are just like
Kurt's being awful quiet. I don't know if it's because Jen's here. I think it's because Jen's here. He's just not saying no.
I have to leave if I want him to talk. Go ahead.
All right. She's a smart one.
But I often say it's not about the money. I'm not in politics for the money. I'm losing money.
I know what you make. You're not making money at Jeff City.
But so 4 and 5 really upset me because I believed in what we were doing. That process went through the whole legislature. Your House signed off on it. Your Senate signed off on it. Your governor signed off on it. So you have all of your electeds out there, and then it comes out to the people. And I understand the frustrations. We have people in our own house that didn't understand a lot of what was going on. We don't always get to write the ballot language. The Supreme Court does a lot of that for us, right?
Right.
So what you see at the ballot box, and then to have people just attack it that because they don't understand it, it's like there was a lot of people worked really hard on it and to try to come out with the best product.
It's easy to convince people no.
It is.
It is easy to get people confused to vote no. That's easy. Mm-hmm. To convince them yes, that's the trick. And 4 and 5 were both issues, and we heard this a lot. And as election authority, it's really not our job to explain it, because it is hard to explain anything in a neutral way without somebody saying, well, you're for or against. And that's, we can't do that. We have to stay neutral, which is why we generally put everything on the website and say, here's the content, here's the information, here's what you can read. You have to do your due diligence to read that. But unfortunately, those who are against 4 and 5, they had an easy time just saying, this is insider language, vote against the insider.
Yeah.
And
vote against your elected officials. And I just say this, you all voted for us to go up there and work on this stuff. I understand. If I had it my way, it would be real easy to figure out, but it's not my way. There's a lot of people involved in it, and it goes through a lot of hands, a lot of eyes, and a lot of everything. But, I understand some of the mistrusts in government, but then again, I don't understand them on that same note. So, I think it's imperative that we continue to instill trust in our populace, wherever we're at, whatever party you're with. You need to make sure that the people that you want, that are voting for you, that you're telling them the truth and that you're giving them the results so that they want at the end.
Speaking of amendments 4 and 5, Richard, you and I had a little prediction of how the elections were the various races were going to turn out.
Who won this prediction?
He did by one, and one of them was
just one vote.
Well, we voted on the county executive, collector of revenue, director of elections, county council 3, 5, and amendments 4, 5, 1, and 2. Mm-hmm. And because he won by one vote, he thinks he's getting lunch.
Oh,
and what he doesn't know is it's not going to be much of a lunch, but I'll get it to you.
He's easy to please.
I'm good with White Castle.
He's easy to please.
All right, folks. Look, hey, I appreciate you guys coming in. It's been a great show. Congratulations again. I thank all of our listeners for tuning in this Sunday afternoon, and we'll see you next week.